Are you ready? The Kornelia Stephanie Show. Wake up to love, your call to action. Join Kornelia as she empowers others to live heaven on earth. Kornelia teaches listeners how to be the authority over yourself, embracing your inner guru. Feel yourself uplifted into limitless expansion, integrating ease and grace in a changing world. This show will cover topics such as unconditional love, your physical body, how to be in extraordinary relationships, create financial and emotional wealth, embracing entrepreneurship in the new earth. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kornelia Stephanie Show. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you today in our Stories of Hope series. I can't wait to introduce you to our first guest, Chad Wooters. He is a dedicated lifelong learner with a knack for turning complex information into actionable insights, possessing a blend of traditional and cutting-edge skills from public speaking to AI-driven solutions. His integrity matched with a Mount Everest level commitment to his work makes him a trustworthy and innovative leader, ideal for driving your business forward. Living your business forward, driving your business forward. He has an MBA and has been in business and business development for over 10 years. Helping others level up and do more is his passion. Welcome to the show today, Chad. Nice to have you.
Thanks, Kornelia. It's a pleasure to meet you.
My goodness. So when we were talking in the green room just before we came on, I was asking you, what is it that you want to highlight? And right away, you shocked it with talking about a tombstone or something.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to, all of us at the end of our day, we are going to have an end of our days. And at that time, when life is over, we have some kind of memoir, a gravestone, a headstone, a plaque in the ground, whatever it looks like. And typically on those, we have room for our name. Right below that, we have the day that we're born. We have the day that we passed away and a little dash mark in between. The dash mark represents all of who we are, all of what we did, and really the impact we left on the world. And right below that, written in stone, we have room for three words that encompass all of that impact. Three words that when someone looks at your name, they're going to say, oh, this person was. And I totally stealing this from Brendan Bouchard, but he says, what are your three words? And I remember where I was sitting when this question got asked in the book that he wrote. And I just thought, I've been talking for a living for a little while, and no one's asked me to talk less. And this is probably a really great place to start. And so I sat down, I wrote down 15 words. I went down to 12, and then getting to 7 was really hard. Getting to 5 was incredibly difficult. And going to three words that if I could say are written in stone about me and the impact I had, what would they be? And my story, a lot of the transformation I've gone through, it comes from these three words and how I got there. And so I'm going to be sharing my three words. So the first word is faith. There was a time in my life where I was a jerk and a not nice person. And, I met God, had a bit of a exchange with him, an argument with him, and basically became a Christian and went from a jerk and a not nice person to just a not nice person. I'm just kidding. But that was a huge transformation in my life. I lost friends. I really had a different moral compass and really just a whole new way of looking at life. And so the first word on my gravestone would be faith. The second word is kind. There was a time in my life, it was my second business. And my first business, that was really structured to be like a nonprofit. It was a company that it paid its own staff, provided services to families who couldn't afford to do the higher end education, tutoring, that kind of thing. And it was running on its own. Started my second company and thought I had to move to the big city. Moved out to LA, did the whole deal. And within a couple of years, got to a point where I had to make a choice. I had to pay my people or I had to pay my bills. And if you've ever owned a business, if you've ever been responsible for paying your bills and paying your employees and paying your team, there's not really a choice there. People are relying on you to do your part. And as the leader of that, there was no choice. And so there was 3 months during this time where I had less than $1 a day that I could afford to eat with. And because I had to move to the big city, I actually couldn't afford to drive home most days. And so I was kind of sleeping in the car, doing these different pieces. And there was this gal named Lorena. And Lorena lived a couple minutes from the office, and she'd see me working all hours into the night, and she'd say, "Hey, would you come over to have dinner with me and my family? I just do you mind? I think it'd be fun to have you over." And and she didn't know this, but that was the only meal I was stretching that bean and cheese burrito from Del Taco across the day, and that was the only meal there. Bernie gave me his cucumbers from his salad that his wife kept packing him at lunch, and he didn't know it, but that was my vitamins for the day. And their kindness literally saved my life. I lost 9 pounds during that time because I couldn't afford to eat. And so I can tell you with confidence, if you are ever looking to lose weight, just start a business, not be able to afford to provide for it, and then you're good to go. I'm just kidding. Bad advice. Don't do that. But that kindness, like I said, saved my life. The third word for me is present. I think our handy dandy phones that they are today, they're really cool pieces of technology, and they ought to facilitate communication in the world in a way that has never been available before. But unfortunately, they've caused a digital divide. They've caused a situation where the phone is more important than the person sitting across the table from you. What you see on Instagram is more important than the person you're having a conversation or interaction with. And the world is sick because of it. And I can really show that the person across the table matters to me by being present. And so my three words are faith, kind, and presence because that's the impact I want to have in the world. And my story of hope comes from that kindness, especially. And that even though back then, this is, I think, close to 10 years, 8 years ago, I want to say, that this happened, it shocked me. It rocked my confidence that I could be a leader, a business owner. And now, looking at where I am today, looking at the impact I have on a day-to-day basis with the company I spend my time leading full time and the company on a part-time basis that I do, and how I help business owners really grow their businesses, dentists grow their practice, it's entirely different. And if had I not gone through that, I wouldn't be the man I am today or have the values I have today. And so that's my story. Those are my words. And I do encourage anyone, take some time to find your words. Set an alarm on your phone that goes off at 9 a.m., especially on Mondays, and says, are you being these three things? And have yourself be accountable to that.
I love this so much. So, I already have my three words while you were talking. I was listening to you.
Awesome.
When you shared your first word, when you shared your first word as faith, my first word would be peace. So that's
Mm,
important to me. I wrote a book on peace. So peace is definitely one. And then when you shared your second word, I do remember what it was. It was kindness, right?
hmm
Your second word, kindness. And my second word is angel.
mm,
So, and then when you shared your third word with present, uh, I took that as well as peace, angel, present. And I think this is such a wonderful exercise to do because I agree with you that we are, the technology and our cell phones and social media is creating a much greater divide, especially in our young people.
yes.
And they are our future leaders on this planet. And it's just, it's creating a further divide than what we really know and what we really want. And so I think the exercise you gave us that, make an appointment on Monday
Yeah.
and get away from the social media and allow yourself to know what your three words are, bringing that full awareness into the present moment so that you can be the three words.
Yeah. Well, and there's nothing, like I said, I have reminders on my phone. I can show you them. They go off. And for me, they go off at strategic times in the day. Monday at 9 a.m. is a really good one. It's usually when I'm challenged to be the best version of myself. But throughout the week, if you have these reminders going off, you can't not think about it. You can't not live your day and say 3 o'clock in the afternoon is another really great time to do this. Am I being kind and present? And am I showing the example of faith? That's my question. And every time that alarm goes off, it's a check to my heart, a check to my mind, and it recalibrates me. I might need to take a few minutes, take a breath, go take a walk outside to get to the point that I can act in the way that I'm called to. But if I don't know what I'm called to, if I don't have definition or clarity on those words, a point to focus on, then what am I doing? How can I act in that way? And that activity allows you to drive that purpose and that meaning.
Yeah. So is this what you're doing when you go to your business meetings, when you're working with entrepreneurs or companies, or is this what you're doing? You're giving them, offering them this talk initially and getting them focused on their three words, or are there other things that you do?
Thanks for asking that. This is something that is kind of by request. I love this kind of stuff. I do teach it in courses that we do really frequently because as working with business leaders, they have to know why they're doing what they're doing. So I believe it's critical. It's foundational. That said, what I normally do is more systematic, more operational, more marketing. What ends up happening though, and I'm sure you know this in any business, as you start to work on the business, you have to kind of back up because how we work on a business is influenced by what we're trying to accomplish and our purpose. And so it does happen frequently that we back up into these purpose conversations, but a lot of times what I'm doing is more strategic, more AI implementation, marketing, systemization, things of that nature.
Yeah, okay, I see. Yeah, because do you think that what you're doing now in your business with, you working with businesses, you working with entrepreneurs, where you said earlier that prior to when you were not successful in business and when you were struggling, you didn't necessarily have these systems in place, would you say that is?
Yeah, there's a lot. I had a lot of growing to do as a person, and not that I'm done. I've got a lot more growing left to do still, but the world is different back 8 years ago. Their technology is exponentially grown. But really, what I think is there are principles around leadership, time management, personal development, finding my why. These different pillars of I guess you could say personal development are critical to a leader. And so there is an element to my coaching that I do that helps leaders find that if that's where they are in their journey. If leaders have done that or they're not interested in it, then we'll work on the business side. But as I shared a moment ago, as we're working on the business, if the leader isn't set up, which will come out in a lot of those questions they're asking about, what are you trying to accomplish? What voice do you want? Who do you want to represent? When you're going out there, we often end up circling back to that. Who am I? What am I? And what am I trying to accomplish? So yes, it does happen a lot, but it's kind of a side angle. Frankly, I love working with folks to figure this stuff out. It's so much fun.
It is.
It's so fulfilling too.
Yeah. And so, you said the key word earlier, one of the key words, why do we do what we do? Why?
Right.
Right? Why? That's your vision, that's your motivation, that's what it's going to be. That's going to help pull you through those difficult times because we know that as entrepreneurs, I mean, we're working 12 hours a day. Why are you doing that? Because you're dedicated to your vision. You want to move, what's your why, right?
Right.
So do you find that once people are clear on their why and having that at the center to know why they're doing it, that is really a jump starter to really get them to line up with all the other things they need to do?
Yes, but there's a big asterisk there. If you find your why and forget your why, it's done you no good. You've borderline wasted your time. I mean, you haven't truly because you found identity, but I would say that's where that reminder comes in. Print it out, post it up, put it on your computer, put it on your wall. Remind yourself of it daily because if you don't, you're gonna lose sight of it. So physically, don't allow yourself to lose sight of it. Put it in a place you're gonna remember it and share it. I love sharing my why because now everyone who's seen this is going to hold me accountable. And that's how we grow together.
Yeah, sharing your why. So do you want to share your why with us today?
Well, actually, that's it. Those three
Okay.
words.
Oh,
Yeah.
those three words are your why.
Yes. I mean, I can go into the monologue version of that, but that is the most easily succinct, shareable version of my why that's there is to serve others, to be faith-based, kind, and present in my interactions while serving others.
Yeah, that's very simple. And isn't it wonderful? The more simple it is, the less complicated. It just seems to clear away all the noise and the clutter that we try to have around us that keeps us occupied or seemingly busy. When we have it in simple terms, we can take action better.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So how do people find you on social media? What can they do to, look you up and learn more about you?
Yeah, Chad Wooters, ChadWooters, and you can find me on my website, chadmwooters.com. And I've got a blog there, a couple different pieces and resources. I'd love to chat and connect, whether it's finding your why or leveling up your business. I'd love to just chat.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chad, for coming on. We're going to take a break on the Kornelia Stephanie Show. We'll be right back, everyone. Hi, everyone. And here I am. Welcome back to the Kornelia Stephanie Show. We've got our stories of hope. And I have a couple here today that these two have a podcast, and they are experts in relationship support, men and women, Dr. Ray and Jean. And I did not get to see how to say your last name. Why don't you say it for me?
It's Kadkhodaian.
Kadkhodaian.
Yeah.
That seems I can do that easily. Dr. Ray and Jean Kadkhodaian have been married since Valentine's Day in 1998. And in 2002, they co-founded the Lighthouse Emotional Wellness Center, a counseling center in the Chicagoland area. They created and perfected a unique approach to coach couples to have amazing relationships called couples synergy, and have helped thousands of couples transform their relationships. Dr. Ray and Jean both have master's degrees and a doctorate in clinical psychology. They co-host their own podcast called Couples Synergy, Real Couples, Real Stories, Real Relationships, and coach couples worldwide on how to have amazing relationships. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Kornelia, for having us.
Oh my goodness. So the two of you were single once upon a time, and then you met.
We met actually working in the field of counseling and psychology. We had a common client, right? Mm-hmm. We had a common client, and I was doing job counseling, and he was doing residential counseling. And so, we would kind of confer and talk about our clients, and just kind of a friendship and a relationship developed from that. That was 27 years ago.
Yeah. Wow, I'd say that was a divine appointment.
Yeah, absolutely it was. And, to actually move into working with couples and relationships, it was really just a calling. It was something that we were both kind of drawn, to do as well. We came out of dysfunctional relationships ourselves, and in searching for like the building blocks and the tools necessary to have a healthy relationship, that's something that we started creating within our own relationship, our own marriage. Led us to start our counseling practice in the Chicagoland area on that premise alone, to help couples have a successful approach to working on their marriage and transforming it.
30 years ago, being new in the psychology field, there's not a lot of training. And as a new therapist, you're kind of throwing a family, you're throwing a couple, and it's not fun. There's refereeing happening and people trying to get sides and stuff. And we thought, we could do this better. This isn't effective for us. It's not effective for them. So we started the Lighthouse in order to find a better way to work with couples. And then over the 20 plus years we've been doing that, we noticed there were things that we were teaching every couple over and over again, saying these certain things. And what we figured out is there is really a formula for having a relationship, in the same way that there is a formula to ballroom dance. And you have to know each other's steps, and you have to know your part, and they have to know their part. And then the couple comes together in this synergy. And so it gets tailored specific to couples after they learn those type of things. But there's so much we don't learn, growing up, because our first relationship is parent-child.
Right. And so the two of you, I love that you created a template, that you you notice that out there, what was being taught out there isn't necessarily, there hasn't been really any a successful way. Maybe they've been quieted, but not, because we know that the statistics out there for people happily married or happily together, I don't know what the stats are, but I know that they're not good.
They're not good.
No,
Right?
no.
We know they're not good. So the fact that the two of you were using yourselves as examples in that, and how to create a successful and happy relationship, which is, and then you can then offer that to your clients and the people that you serve. So what is the thing that you see people struggling with the most in relationships right now?
There are two demographics of couples that come and see us and seek out our services. Young couples who have kids, and they're very successful. They have the house, they have the white picket fence, they have the cars, the kids are doing well, but they're kind of like, now what? Right? They've surpassed their parents' relationships, and now they don't really know what to do. So they followed the formula, and they're in the now what phase. Right? What do I do? How do we have a committed and bonded partnership when everything, all the successes, everything that we achieve is successful? What now? And then the other demographic is couples who have been together for a very long time, 20 plus years. And, they raise their kids, and the kids are out of the home and everything. And now they're looking at each other like, now what are we going to do with the rest of our life? And they're not happy, they're disconnected, and they want to reconnect again.
And the two things that they struggle with the most is they're not spending enough time together, quality time. They're not investing in the relationship, and they're not having the difficult conversations that they need to have. And typically that's because of things that happened to them in their childhood, where they learned to coping skills of dealing with things that are no longer functional, but they really don't know what to do next. And it really is, I don't know what to do. And I think too many marriages end because we don't know what to do. We're not happy, but we don't know what to do. So the only thing we know is, let's stop being unhappy and end this relationship. But of course, we all know people who they do that, and then they find themselves in another relationship with the same unhappiness because they haven't fixed that. And so it's sort of a two-pronged approach, where a person is not who they were on their wedding day, and they don't really know themselves anymore. They get too busy with life and taking care of kids and, growing their careers. So part of what we do is help people get in touch with themselves, and then be able to communicate that with their partner in a very different way than they learned when they were kids.
So do you work with people, when couples come to you, do you work with them individually and also together, or together?
Our program is over a 90-day period of time, and during that time there's individual work and also conjoint work. So I work with the husbands, and Jean works with the wives, and we do that individually, help them figure out themselves and what their role is, right, and how to step into that role authentically. And then we work with the couple together, and in those sessions we are helping them learn new skills and new tools to kind of shift the pattern and the dynamic that they're stuck in.
You said earlier, Jean, that there's two parts: investing in the relationship, and I think the other one you said was it has to do with communication, like not knowing how to communicate. Is that right?
Yeah, we've never taught anyone vocabulary, so the reason communication breaks down has nothing to do with not being able to find the words. It has to do with not being able to identify what's really happening in yourself, because so much is automatic. And we don't really understand how much we've learned. We learned so much in our childhoods before we're really very conscious, and we just bring that with us, and we think that's all there is. But of course, that was made up somewhere up in the family tree. And so then it's like, well, how do you learn these new skills? And how do you learn to be honest and to be forthcoming and vulnerable and that with your partner? And how do you vet if your partner is safe to do that with? And that's the process that we take them through.
Yeah, I love that so much, because what comes up for me when you're talking about the communication piece is that sometimes we just don't know. You talked about safety. Sometimes we just don't know how to communicate our vulnerability because we've never done it before, or because in the relationship, possibly the partner is blaming or judging, or, that whole thing. So I think even in the communication piece, the communication breakdown is, can we just sit and listen to each other? What is it that you want to be heard by? What's important to you, and what are your needs? Is that part of that?
Absolutely. And, to all of our credit, Kornelia, relationships have changed, right? They have evolved into needing to communicate vulnerabilities. Past generations, you had standard and static roles, and you lived pretty much parallel lives. You lived your life, your wife lived their life, and you really had very little interaction, maybe, over the kids. Okay. And there was a formula to follow. You worked and you got your gold watch and your pension, and it was all static in that way. And the community really reflected all of those standards as well. But in today's day and age, couples don't have a standard to live by now. And the specifications or requirements in a relationship are much more, right? They're much more complex, and you have to be now vulnerable in your communication. You have to bond at a much deeper level. And so couples are challenged with that, with no template and no, mentor out there to really show them how to do that.
And because of the communication or the community breakdown, when my mom was raising us, all the moms were home on that street. And so those needs that were more emotional, that might not have been getting met by my dad, were getting met by her friends or her peers. And so you went to your mother or your aunts or your friends for the kind of advice about how to raise your kids or whatever you were struggling with. Well, now families are quite isolated, and they're sort of doing it themselves, and they are looking more to their partner to meet way more needs than was historically what was happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like what comes up for me, like when it comes to relationships, is being able to communicate what my feelings are, being able to communicate what my feelings are, what my needs are, and what my truth is, and what my values are. And I think a lot of what you're talking about culturally, the people, how they were originally raised in their culture might have changed for them today. And it's not the same anymore than it was back then. And their values might have changed, so it might be different. And so then getting back on that same page again, like you did maybe when you were 18, like what were our goals then? What was the vision then? What were we, going after then? And, after being married for 30 or 40 years, maybe we grew apart, but there's still some sort of energy there for us to get to know each other again.
A lot of couples, they say to us, that they want and wish that they would go back in time, right? And have that relationship they had when they first met, but it's impossible. Because they're different people now than you were back when you met. And so it's really about teaching them this forward progression, right? What are you going to evolve into, right? And what is that common vision that you both aspire to achieve? And that's really where a lot of couples are lost, right? They don't really know how to do that together. They don't know how to create that together.
Yeah.
I was going to tell a story about this couple we were working with. And, when they initially came to see us, she was so fed up because he just couldn't do anything right. He didn't load the dishwasher right, and he couldn't fold the laundry right. And, she had all these great ideas in her head about she knew the right way, and he, of course, was wrong. And he, of course...
And for him, he was like, well, if I can't do the dishwasher right and the laundry right, then why do it? Right? I'm just going to be corrected every time, so I'm just going to take a back seat in the relationship and just wait to be told what to do.
And you can see how isolating that was. And that's a really little good example of the way men and women are coming up in the world now. The woman is now financially independent and maybe even more successful than her husband. And has a lot of fear and control issues. The women's control issues are huge, and they don't even realize how controlling they're being, and it's so fear based. And one day she was putting the kids to bed, and she came downstairs, and he was having an alcoholic beverage, but in like a mug that you couldn't see through,
like a Yeti cup or something
you'd put water in or something. And she went to him and noticed he was acting weird, and she's like, "Are you drinking?" And he's like, "No." And then he finally admitted that he was, and so she came into the next session with me, and we were talking about it, and she really felt like the problem was his drinking, and we should work on that. And so when we took a little step back and asked her, what is this bringing up for you? What was uncovered is that when she was a little girl, her dad would bring home the big gulp, and he would spike it. And then her mom and dad would get in these big fights. And so it wasn't that he was drinking, it's that it was in a cup that didn't look like he was drinking, like he was hiding something. And so once we came back together, the four of us, and had that conversation, and he's like, "Okay, I'll put it in a regular drinking glass, a rocks glass, and then there's not an issue." And it really was that uncovering of that childhood experience to find out what was the real problem. It really wasn't that he was drinking. It's just that it looked like there was something going on that she didn't know about. And she was able to really soften in that relationship and let go a lot of that have to kind of stuff, or being right.
And, that's kind of the concept of the iceberg, 15% above the water, 85% under the water. Yeah. And most couples get stuck fighting about the stuff at the 15% level.
Yeah. I can resonate with that so much, and relate to, how women, how the story that you just told about what that would bring up for her during that time, that it brought up the childhood wound. Once that was addressed, she was able to soften. And that's a beautiful way. And I think a lot of women, like you said, have control issues, in relationships because of just our past and the things that we've had to, experience and go through. And the sad thing is that, then we start dictating about, you should do it this way, you should do it this way, you should do it this way, and my way is the only way, and that kind of thing. So I'm so glad that you are out there doing this work that you're doing, helping couples. Let's tell the audience how they can look you up with your podcast and how they can find you on social media.
The quickest way is to go to our website, couplesynergy.com, 2 S's, couplesynergy.com. Our podcast, you can access that anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible even. And it's Couple Synergy, real couples, real stories, real relationships. That would be probably the best way if they want to just send us a direct message at contact@couplesynergy.com.
And we do free consultations with anyone who wants to work with us to make sure it's a good fit for both us and for them.
That's so good. Yeah, it's great that the work that you're doing out there, because I know that there's a lot of people that are in trouble, and are learning a way to communicate and honor each other. That really is the goal, to create what you said, loving relationships that work, relationships that heal. So Dr. Ray and Jean, thank you so much for coming on the Kornelia Stephanie show today.
Thank you again for having us.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Our next guest today is Nanci Lamborn. She helps hurting people in the process of trading ashes for beauty, fear of strength, and bondage for freedom through heart healing prayer. Since being led on her own healing journey to find freedom from a traumatic, painful past, Nanci has answered God's calling on her life to lead others into their own healing. She has woven many of her corporate human resource skills into her ministry techniques, along with her personal experience of transformation from constant offense to a life of joy. As a chaplain and an ordained inner healing minister, Nanci uses biblically based, well-established heart healing prayer methods, including Emmanuel approach prayer, Bethel Zazo style prayer, and freedom in Christ, and other tools. Others describe her as anointed, a gentle and quiet spirit, then roaring like a wind. And her clients say she helped them shatter the chains of their painful past. In addition to inner healing and deliverance ministry, Nanci is the author of Angry Daughter, A Journey from Hatred to Love. Welcome to the show today, Nanci.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So we were talking in the green room that you had a hatred for the world.
Yes. And I didn't recognize the source of my hatred, but I was a very unhappy person. I was the road rager. I was the backbiter. There's an undercurrent of fury all the time, through marriage, through children, through work. I just was unhappy. And I never recognized that there was any other state to be because it was all I knew. My mother was very angry growing up. And when I experienced abuse and she knew and chose to blame me and turn on me and do nothing, I became as angry as she was. And so I carried this anger and hatred of her specifically, of my mom and all the things she had done well into my 40s, until a person at church connected with us, became my mentor. And she, after spending time with us, me and my husband, and getting to know her, she began to peg the source of all of my underlying anger. And so she offered to take me on a journey. And so I had never heard of anything about heart healing prayer, healing of emotions, anything like that. I was very traditional upbringing. And so she sat me down for a couple of hours and we line itemed every single thing that my mom had ever done to hurt or offend or wound or dishonor me. Every word she spoke, everything she didn't do, the things she blamed me for. We named the emotions about how it felt. And then we forgave it all. She walked me through forgiving it. And no one had ever shared with me about this detailed forgiveness. We often today, we just lump, oh, I forgave her. But then I've closed the door and walked away. And it's really that I've just buried it. I've actually not released it. And so I learned the difference between just that shoving and actually addressing all the hurt and the pain. So it's very, very powerful, very emotional. It needed to be a lot of cleansing, tears, and relief. But the most profound thing was 2 days later, I went home to visit my mom. And as soon as I walked into her house and saw her, I was shocked at the transformation of my heart. I was no longer bitter, irritated. Something profound had happened in me. She didn't change. That's very important. She did
Yeah.
not change.
Yeah.
I changed. And my capacity to see her as the broken person that she was gave me new pity for her and helped me to come into relationship where I'm not just constantly walking in irritation around her. And it profoundly changed every part of my life. So much so that now my life's work is to do what my mentor did with me and walk other people through the same thing. And I've met with one-on-one with over 2,000 people to do that.
Yeah, and because it was such a gift, because you've been freed,
Oh, yes.
you were freed from this heavy burden that you were carrying around, like you were constantly, like you said, you were the bully, you were the road rager, you were the one
Yes,
that was just constantly projecting out, hate out, anger,
absolutely.
right? And then when your mentor sat you down and helped you move through all of that, you became light and you became free.
Yes,
And then you were
yes,
able to see your mother even with more compassion, simply
yes,
because you didn't have that. You've already forgiven her.
yes. It was
And
beautiful.
you also said in the green room before we came live that you became your caretaker for your mother.
Yes.
And tell us about that.
So she got COVID in 2021 and she's in her 70s. She's obese. She already had COPD. She was medically fragile already and it almost killed her. Um, and she was so weak, she couldn't even hold a pencil. And so she'd reached maximum care and they put her in a nursing home that wasn't equipped and she got hurt. And I said, you know what? This isn't going to end well if we don't step in. So we broke her out and I put a hospital bed in my home and I brought
Wow.
her home and I became her caretaker. We didn't recognize until she came home that she was actually also a closet alcoholic. When I'd cleaned her home out, we found bottles everywhere and it was everything clicked into place about things we'd experienced. So we were detoxing, and she couldn't walk. She was angry about being there. She was incontinent, but it was an opportunity for me to just love on her. It was hard, but it was beautiful. And I required her to sit under physical therapy, which she didn't want to do, but she did. She got sober and she got healthy, and she got well enough to go back home. And things shifted in our relationship at that point. But then she died very suddenly, just a couple of months later. And so the foundation of the book I wrote actually began sitting at her deathbed, when God told me in my spirit, pay attention to what's happening right now. And a nurse looked out the window and said, look at the sunset. It's beautiful. So I looked at it, and it was stunning. And then I turned over and looked at my mother, and I heard the voice of God say, this sunset is beautiful. And he was showing me that I had so much gratitude that I could have been sitting at her deathbed full of bitterness and anger and unforgiveness and resentment. And it was beautiful. It was an honor. It was profound. So that's actually the first chapter of the book, about how much of a transformation it made in my life.
This is such a, when you were talking about, then your mother suddenly dying and all of that, the time that you two had together when she moved into your house, everything was illuminated. The fact that you were fighting for her, getting her out of the COVID place and bringing her home, and then discovering that she was a closet alcoholic, which then also explained why when you were as a child where you were molested because, or sexually abused or whatever. And how is it that some of our mothers could actually not say anything about it simply because they were hiding things back then to sweep?
Absolutely. We all kept secrets. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
that's what we did.
Well, that was the generation. You're
Yes,
not
it
supposed
was. Oh,
to
yes, it
sweep
was.
it. Don't tell the neighbors. Don't tell anybody. Sweep it all under the carpet
Yeah.
because what are they
What
going to
will
say?
people think of us?
What will people think of us? And so
Yeah.
those are the burdens. But the
Mhm.
fact that you and your mom had this time together, this short time, the fact that you forgave her was so beautiful because it then released her
It
from the
did.
contractual relationship of,
Yes.
two souls coming together and
Hmm.
having the experience that you had. I just think that's so beautiful. And she was then able also to make peace with her life.
Oh, absolutely. Her gratitude changed. She softened.
Oh,
Um, yeah, it was beautiful. One of the biggest things, too, through praying for her was that God showed me one of the biggest reasons she was so broken is that her father had died when she was 15 years old.
mm,
And this awareness came, oh, she's emotionally 15 and has been for her entire life. And
yeah,
it made total sense that she had
totally.
gotten stuck there because of this trauma and a very angry, harsh mother of her own. And so how do 15-year-olds behave? They're dramatic and narcissistic and cause conflict and all the things. And so it really gave me a lot more understanding of who she was.
And gosh, just even talking with you right now, I just feel so much compassion for your mother, for
Yes.
how alone she must have felt throughout
Oh,
her
yes, terribly. And she was in
time.
the middle of seven, and she was labeled the black sheep. So yes, she was an outcast at age 10.
Yeah.
So yes, and
And how many?
compassion is where this book goes. We have an opportunity with this painful past to
Yeah.
write in revenge, but it's not. The story is actually, a friend of mine called it a love letter to my mom. And even though there's hard things in here, it is. It's a redemptive story.
Yeah, I definitely want to get the book. I think it's a wonderful show it to us on the screen
Sure.
so we can
Yeah.
see it.
So it's
What's the
called
name of
Angry
it?
Daughter.
Mm.
Angry Daughter, A Journey from Hatred to Love.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I relate to some of the things that you shared because I too had tremendous healing in my own life, and that is I discovered back in the day when I was doing this healing work that I had self-hatred at my root core, hatred
Oh,
of self.
so common. So common.
And once I replaced that self-hatred with radical self-love, it's
Hmm.
it's now, the best relationship.
Absolutely.
So it's wonderful. So now you're working with people, you're helping people all over the place. Like, well, what does that look like? How does that work?
Sure. So I'm a one person ministry. I'm ordained under a ministry that basically ordains you and then send you out to do the work. And so I sit down with one person face to face, usually. I do on Zoom as well, but usually face to face. And I will spend 4 or 5 hours in one sitting with one
Oh,
person.
wow.
And we talk about everything. What was your mother's pregnancy like carrying you? Because trauma can begin in the womb. Did your mother want you? Were your parents even married? What was the birth like? I met with a lady the other day who she was born with a cord wrapped around her neck, and she'd picked up a spirit of death and
Mm.
didn't know that. And so then we talk about, how well did your mother want you? Did she love you? Was she attuned to you? Did she have a favorite child that wasn't you? How did she treat your father? Has she separated from you now as an adult? Is there codependency? Were you allowed your own opinion with your mother? So many people are like, no, it was her way or the highway. Then we talk about everything with dad. Did dad want you? Was he affectionate? Did you feel that he was proud of you? How was your dad with money? Did you see habits? Was there any affairs that you knew of? So we do a whole history of the family. We're looking for generational patterns, destructive family patterns. And then we talk about the boyfriend that broke my heart and the husband that cheated on me and the friend who betrayed me. We talk about, because this is biblically based, we talk about, things we've done that we would consider defiling. Have I had 40 boyfriends that I've slept with? Have I been immersed in pornography? Have I, was shoplifting a season for me all through high school and I thought nothing of it? Different things like that. And then we also talk about trauma. We talk about every trauma, the dog bite, the house burning down, what great uncle did in the closet, seeing the car accident.
Tell
So
me
I
about
take this.
tell me about the house burning down. What does the house burning down mean?
Well, if they walked through a loss of a home as a child and watched them, they've lost everything as a young child.
Yeah,
That's extreme trauma to a child.
yeah.
Because the dog died and it was my sister's fault and now everyone blames her. The family dynamic changes unless they're deeply stable. The family dynamic changes, but often, oh well, everyone survived, we're fine. But if this child's love language was gifts, they've lost everything that they owned, their favorite teddy bear, their favorite pillow. That's a lot of trauma to a child, and most children they're not addressed properly to walk through these things, to grieve appropriately over the loss of their favorite teddy bear.
Yeah.
So
So how does that work? Do you see people in person or on Zoom?
both. It's about 60-40 in person versus on Zoom, but I've Zoomed with people all over the world. So it doesn't matter where someone is. If they're in the metro area and they want to spend time with me, great. If not, we'll do it over Zoom. But we do a ton of forgiving, lots of forgiving. We do repenting, biblical, God, I'm sorry for doing this. We renounce lies. The self-hatred you talked about, I renounce self-hatred. I choose self-love. God, what do you say about me? And I build a truth list for them to take away once they've dealt with all of the baggage for them to walk out of.
Now, what is your social media handles? Where can people look you up? And also
Yes.
tell us about where to find your book.
Yes. So Lamborn Author is my social media handle everywhere, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, Lamborn Author. My website is lambornauthor.inc, INK, like the pen ink. And Angry Daughter, it's available on Amazon, ebook and print. And then it's also on Google Play Books as an ebook. I'll be working on the audiobook in a few months. But for now, it's primarily Amazon.
That's so great. I just have one more question for you. So did you, with this whole thing with the work that you've done, did all of this occur for you from 2020 to now? Like you've got certified in your healing ministry?
That's been about 7 years.
Okay.
So I've been full-time in ministry for 7 years.
And what ministry was that?
Well, the name of the ministry I'm ordained in is called Beth Shalom. Mm-hmm. And that's Hebrew for a house where there's nothing missing, nothing broken, and an absence of chaos.
It's so beautiful. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love what you're doing. It just feels so freeing.
Oh, yes. So much freedom. People's face change when they leave. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And I bet there's a lot of crying and releasing and healing.
Oh, yes. But for me, it doesn't get old because I'm watching freedom.
Totally. Yeah, you're doing God's work, that's for sure. I want to thank you so much for coming on. It was a
Absolutely.
wonderful pleasure to meet you, and
You
thank you
as
for
well.
sharing
Thank
your
you.
story. Yeah,
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening and tuning into the Cornelia Stephanie Show. We're going to see you again next Friday, everyone. Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Kornelia Stephanie Show, Wake Up to Love, your call to action. Tune in each week on Transformation Talk Radio. Kornelia's joy is to engage others in practical ways, showing us how to live in the new earth in harmony with our true nature. For more information on Kornelia and her extraordinary work, or to listen to past shows, go to her website at korneliastephanie.com.